The TDSB is Canada's largest school board and one of the biggest in North America, with nearly 250,000 students, close to 600 schools, and a budget of around $3 billion. It is now seeing its third director in 5 years and its second chair in 2. It is also being criticized for its financial and management practices. Joining us is TDSB Vice Chair Jennifer Arp. Thank you so much for joining us
Thank
today.
you for having me.
You were elected in the last municipal election as one of the new faces at the school board. Is it being what you expected?
It is. It is exactly what I expected. I knew going into the job December 1st, 2014, that there was a lot of work that we needed to do. Restoring the reputation, focusing on students, and work on some serious governance issues that we had. And we've come a really long way in the last just over a year since I took office.
So in that year, you've seen another set of transitions, a new chair, and you're now sitting as the vice chair.
That's correct. And we're both of the class of 2014. We're both from the new group that came in with the 11 new trustees.
And you've also had a change now with former Director Kwan, who took over for a previous director, and now she's moved to the province, and you've now got an interim director, if I understand.
We do. We have Dr. John Malloy, who will be with us for the next 18 months as interim director, to really look at the staffing and governance and how we can move forward at the end of his term when he's finished.
And is there a search now for a new executive or education director?
We will be undertaking that starting in March or April. Executive searches take a long time, so the 18-month period that Dr. Malloy will be with us will allow us to properly conduct a search. He is not allowed under his contract to apply for the permanent position. So hopefully that will allow us to take in a really large and qualified group of applicants to be able to choose from as we move forward. So
what has stood out in your mind as over the past year as being a new trustee?
Lots has stood out. The focus on Aboriginal education is something that I wasn't aware we did as a board. How we work really hard to service underprivileged students. We're looking at quite possibly 50% of the city living at or below the poverty line within a few years. And so the TDSB really is on the forefront of understanding that and working with our schools and our communities to come up with a plan that services those children, because they deserve to succeed just like everybody else.
Now, one of the topics in the news has been that Toronto and the rest of Canada has been receiving a number of Syrian refugees. How is the TDSB responding to those new Canadians that are entering into the school system for the very first time?
So far, we've accepted about 80 into the TDSB, which isn't abnormal considering the number of immigrants that we take in the city of Toronto as a whole. But we are working with other school boards in trying to reach the children that are government-sponsored refugees that are living in hotels that have yet to enter the school system. So in speaking with the executive superintendent in charge of our refugees, she was saying that the Catholic School Board and the TDSB have come up with a plan to get those children into school for at least a couple of hours a day using our underutilized classroom space that they're starting to learn and out of the hotels.
There's been a lot of talk, you raise underutilized space. Been a lot of talk about school closures, reallocation of resources. What is happening in that respect?
So we are looking quite seriously at the high school level, understanding that if a school isn't full, especially at the high school level, you're not able to offer a full program. And in high school, it really is key. So we're undertaking a number of studies, one in the ward that I represent, where they're looking at the schools that are below the 65% level. The elementary level it's a bit different because students deserve to be able to walk to their local school. And so how can we then come up with a plan for the underutilized elementary schools that allow those schools to stay open, working with community partners, agencies, putting in pediatric clinics, working with the city to put in seniors programming. The whole notion of a community hub, it's starting to happen in the elementary level, which will allow those schools to stay open and serve their communities.
Now, in your particular ward of Eglinton Lawrence, there's been a lot of contention about one school that is considered surplus, Bannockburn, and taking part of that land and selling it to developers, in essence, privatizing part of the school property. And where is that right now?
Oh, well, it comes back again this week to board on Wednesday. I put forward a motion to rescind the surplus declaration last March. And in that time, we've had a number of deferrals. My motion comes back this week. But in the meantime, we've actually, seen some movement from our other public agencies and other public partners. So it's not over yet. It's still ongoing. It could be May or June before we exactly know what's going to happen with that site.
That raises the question, and not only is the school board facing it, but the city is also facing it as well, is what do you do with surplus assets, and do you privatize some of the underutilized assets? What is your thoughts on that?
Well, I think we need to be looking at the city as a whole. In Eglinton Lawrence, there are a number of TDSB properties that are surplus and they're leased, and all but one are leased to private schools. And so when we look forward and we're looking at the properties, we need to decide, is that really the best, holding on to those sites, is that really in the best interest of the students and the families who choose public education? So is it moving forward with the sales of those properties to be able to invest in school infrastructure across the system? That's a question. Or partnering, looking at more public-private partnerships. As we know, governments at every level are challenged financially right now. And so how can we best partner in a way that serves the students and the families in the system?
Over the past couple of years, there's been a number of studies. There's been the Hall report, and there's also been the Wilson report. One focusing on governance and one on fiscal practices. Where are they, and how has the TDSB responded to those two reports?
So the Wilson report looked at a number of internal structures within the TDSB and gave us a very short window, only 30 days to respond. That response was due back last February, so we're moving on. The difference with the Hall report and the governance work that they undertook and looked at is that the province came back and the ministry said, we're recommending that you implement these. It's a very big difference than what they did with the Wilson report, where they gave us directives and a deadline. So I think that they recognize the work that we've done and what we tried to do in terms of putting structures in place and better functioning committees to be able to work as trustees and with staff to be able to come up with the best policy that serves the system.
Now, for all the ink that the TDSB has received over the past number of years, kids are still getting a great education. I have to disclose, 2 of my boys are in TDSB schools. I know your kids are also, and there's a lot that hasn't been shared with the public. Good news stories. What types of good news stories can you share that viewers would be interested in?
Sure. I am a public school parent, and I got involved and decided to be a trustee because I have children in the system. Some of the great things that go on, we have a partnership with Rotman that looks at integrative thinking and teaching, MBA level material to high school students, and how high school students process that and work through it. That's really unique and an amazing opportunity for our students.
And how are students doing in terms of provincial standards? The EQAO, I know, is something that helps act as a barometer, and there's other reports that come out. How are the students at TDSB doing?
The TDSB performs above provincial average in EQAO, and our graduation rates are also higher than the provincial average, which again speaks to our staff and our principals and our team doing their absolute hardest every day to serve the students.
Now, this year started off a little bit on a rocky foot with the teachers. Where are we with that? Has peace been brought into the land and everyone's now focused on academic achievement?
We're almost there. One contract outstanding with the OSSTF, not the secondary teachers, but another group of OSSTF. So, being able to settle and, back into normal classroom routines, really important for students. Elementary parents will be very happy to see report cards come home this weekend as we head into the Family Day weekend. They haven't had report cards for a year. They had report cards last summer, but they didn't have comments, only grades. So, I think, a lot of excitement that we're getting back to normal.
What other things are we expecting from the TDSB? I know it's a long-term process to get things brought in and achieved at the TDSB, but surely there's some projects that you're working on in the next little while?
So Director Malloy's been with us for 5 weeks, and he has been spending some time interviewing and sitting down with all trustees and every senior team member and really coming up with a focused plan to move us forward. One of the criticisms that we received was that our program, Years of Action, which is our strategic plan, was too large and too ambitious to be able to accomplish in a 3-year period of time. So Director Malloy is sitting down and looking at that plan and coming up with, a number of initiatives that we can really zero in on and get some deep work done around equity and inclusion and health and mental well-being and engagement. So exciting things happening and coming forward.
Thank you for joining us today, Trustee Arp. I hope you'll come back and share with us some more news from the TDSB. That is Jennifer Arp, the Vice Chair of the Toronto District School Board. Up next, Riding the Wave with MP Julie DeRusin.